let's do a bit of some historical analysis. This is the first time in a very long time that inflation, year-on-year inflation, is at 3.8%. That's true. But this is not the first time we've found ourselves in a single-digit inflationary period, especially in the early years of an administration. I've made the point over and over again that if you go back to Kwame Dufour's time, for 3 years there was single-digit inflation. That's when, Fifi Kwete coined the expression unprecedented. Then you have the MPP's 2018, 2019 window where we brought down inflation 7.8, 7.1. You still had single-digit inflation. And if you look at post the 54% as a result of the challenges that we had, the forecast was that in 2025, inflation was going to be about 11%, averaging about 11%. Now, there are methods that governments use. Inflation generally has two sides to it. There's cost push inflation, and then there's a demand pull side of it. So one of the first questions you want to ask yourself is, what is the real driver of inflation in Ghana? In Ghana, mostly it's cost push. It is either the inputs of production, the cost of the inputs of production, electricity, raw materials, labor, all of those things, or the exchange rate, because a good chunk of what we consume here in Ghana is imported. So when you have depreciation, that's when you have what they call imported inflation passing through. But both of them will sit on the cost push side. And then you have the demand pull, essentially, which is when there's the view that there's excess liquidity in the economy. So one of the first things you want to consider is, what are the methods being used? The central bank has the mandate to pursue price stability. And they will give you a target of 8 plus or minus 2. What it means in simple language is that Ghana's inflation is supposed to be between 6 and 10%.
Yeah.
To achieve two things. One, to achieve some relative price stability, and two, to keep the engine of economic growth running so that you can grow and you can create jobs. When you go too low, you begin to slow down the economy as well. Now, the methods matter in the sense that if the main driver of inflation in Ghana is mostly cost push, you want to ask yourself, what is the method being used to rein in inflation? And what is the cost of that method and how sustainable is it? And so, for example, if electricity prices are rising, utility prices are rising, cost of raw materials are rising, and the central government is not doing anything about that, what will happen is that the central bank will come in and try and do what you call sterilization or tight monetary policy, with the assumption that if you suck out the money from the equation, you reduce the demand and therefore the propensity for prices to go up. It does not mean that the actual cost of production in any way has gone down. And you find that in some of the answers that your respondents gave you. One of the ladies said, there's no money, people are not buying. And I'm sure the traders who are here will tell you that that's a common refrain in town. That is as a result of the heavy sterilization that the government has done as a method. So the central bank has done heavy sterilization. Initially, you recall when we mentioned it, they denied it. Now they admitted at the end of the year that they had done over 60 billion Ghana cedis worth of sterilization. What that means is that they've sucked that money from the economy. And so that amount of purchasing power is not available to people to buy. So people who are ordinarily even selling the same items at a point say that, listen, let me get rid of this thing and cut my losses. She's nodding to it because she knows it, she feels it in the market. So the methods matter. And by the way, sterilization is not at zero cost. While we are talking of unprecedented 3.8 in about 20-something years, let's check the other side to see when was the last time we sterilized 60 billion cedis from the equation. And I bet you will find out that it will be a par. That this disinflationary path on which we are is being driven extensively by the sterilization and then the tight monetary policy that the central bank is doing. But on the cost push side, you'll find that the real cost of production is actually going up. And so producers in the Ghanaian economy will tell you that it is getting more expensive to produce. The other thing that has happened on the cost push side is
on the production bit, considering that a lot of what we produce, the raw material is imported.
Yes.
You have to obviously factor in the exchange rate question.
I'm coming to that.
That definitely should lead to...
I'm coming to that one. So on the cost push side, you remember I mentioned two things. I mentioned the actual cost of production and then I mentioned the exchange rate. The other thing you will find is that the appreciation of the cedi by between 36 to 40% is contributed extensively to reduce the level of imported inflation into our economy. So you ask yourself again, what are the methods being used to achieve the appreciated currency? And the method being used to achieve the appreciated currency essentially is the high levels of intervention that the central bank is doing, nothing else. That's what's happened. So you come to my second question about what is the cost. I've told you that sterilization is not free. When the Bank of Ghana sterilizes 60 billion cedis into its system, they pay for it. So you'll find out that on the BOG's books in 2025, you'll see the cost of sterilization there. The other cost of sterilization is not just the amount of money that the central bank is paying, but it is in the reduction in credit to the private sector. Because once you suck out all that liquidity, the money that would have been otherwise available to my colleagues here for them to borrow at a low rate and do business, they can't get it. And if they will tell you, they'll tell you that it is more difficult now to get credit from the financial system than it was previously.
But to that, today, I've heard the Bankers Association make the point that the lending rate is going to fall to 17%. And I guess that makes sense, because if the monetary policy obviously is leading to inflationary drop, then there's no need to tighten it anymore, losing it, and then we're going to see that. That is important.
Extensive work trying to map the reduction in the rate to the rate of growth in credit. It doesn't align. So you can reduce the rate, but it will not necessarily translate into a growth in credit to the private sector. In fact, the governor of the central bank quite recently, in one of the publications, I think at the last MPC, admitted that in 2025, credit to the private sector, I think, reduced by half or so. It's reduced extensively. You can let your business team check. He's quite recently mentioned that. And those in the business community will tell you. So the cost is not just the nominal cost to the central bank. The cost is also to the business community, credit to the private sector for them to be able to engage in the kind of productive activity that expands the economy and creates jobs.